Hello, everybody watching. Hello, Meredith.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday the 13th.
Yes, yeah, I forgot. I forgot. It's Friday the
Uh,
13th,
yeah.
and I think it was you who pointed out when we were looking at our stream schedule, or perhaps Pilot, but it was like, hey, we've got a Friday the 13th. We should do something that we can somehow make spooky related. So,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and Taylor and I have kind of been on the 3D print train the last couple of years. Honestly, a year or so for me, but we've kind of found that in common that we both have the same 3D printer type. So we kind of been talking about all that stuff. But I think it's super cool um, to talk about that and just how big the community is and everything. So Taylor, I wanted to ask you how you found 3D printing and what got you started.
yeah. Um, so I've only been doing stuff with 3D printing since April. Actually, that's when I
Wow.
got my printer. I bought it for my birthday,
Oh wow.
actually, and so I basically I got some. My parents actually gave me a little bit. They're like, hey, save this cash for the 3D printer you've been talking about. So I used that, and then asked my wife if we could spend the money on the rest of it, basically.
That's awesome.
And Yeah, so I've been doing that since April, but it's not my first time with 3D printing, but I will say it's mostly my first. So I encountered 3D printing a little bit when I worked at a previous job at St. Norbert. There was um, a small maker space in the library there for a while, and they had, I think, two 3D printers. And mostly my experience with it was kind of walking in there. I didn't work with those students directly, but I'd sort of walk there and probe them with questions. I was like, "So what are you doing?" And it was they'd mostly be like, "Fixing the printer." This is
Mhm.
years ago, and so my impression of it at the time was like, this is really cool. It also seems like something I don't have time for and is way too finicky for me. I shouldn't say I love finicky technology. I'm not afraid of finicky
Yeah.
technology, but I've always in the past looked at it as like, this is not for me right now. Like, I have enough of that kind of hobby. I want to come back to this someday when I feel like I can make time for it, or maybe the stuff is a little bit easier to use, or
Mhm.
whatever. And honestly, what really got me into it was most recently is a little bit seeing what you guys were doing with your 3D printer. And
Yeah.
then just like, I've always been on the periphery of this stuff. So I started asking more folks around. Another friend of mine got a 3D printer as well. And then I started kind of researching, like, sort of what was available, what were people, because it had been years since I've known anything, and I didn't know much at all. And kind of looking at the bamboo stuff. So
Mhm.
bamboo came out with the X1 a couple years ago now, but then they have a whole line of printers now. And reading about how simple those were to use and how accurate and good print quality wise they were, and how they kind of um, and how fast they were, and some of the printers are pretty affordable from them too.
Mhm.
So I was kind of like, maybe this is the time. I have a spot in my basement. I could put one of these things, and then of course, I did the thing that I guess they want you to do. Any company wants you to do. Is I was looking at like the cheapest. I was looking at the A1, which
Yeah.
is like a $300 printer, and then eventually I talked myself up into the X1 Carbon, which is their most expensive printer. Um, but still, like, it's a really nice printer. It does a lot of things, can do all kinds of materials, but is not, we're not talking like $5,000, right?
Yeah,
It was
definitely.
about, like, my printer was like about $1,000, including I got like a deal on like the combo. We'll talk about like multicolor printing,
Yeah.
sure, a little bit. Um, and so that is not cheap by any means, but it is cheap compared to what this kind of thing barely existed last time I was interested in 3D printing, and back
Mhm.
then to get a good one was multiple $1,000s, and even then, good by the standards, the current printers blow them away basically. So yeah, I had kind of encountered it. then I was like, this isn't for me. And then recently came back to it, and now I'm really enjoying it, and also using it as an excuse to learn a little bit about like 3D modeling a little bit too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm the same way. I started tutoring on it at the Digital Knowledge Center at Mary Washington a little bit, and it was mostly troubleshooting the printer and why it wasn't working at the time. So I worked on like a Dremel. I think there was like a 3D scanner one, like a original like maker bot that you could build out of a
Wow.
box, like you built yourself sort of thing, kind of like flat pack ones. And I really only had like a year of experience with it before I graduated. And I kind of stopped looking at 3D printing. And then Reclaim got one for the office space, and I picked it up just a little bit there. We had a Ultimaker, and Tim still uses it at Reclaim Arcade to like print parts for the arcade machines before they get one shipped or whatever. And then about a year ago or two, probably 2 years ago at this point, my husband and I were at a maker, not like a community event that they had a bunch of vendors on, and we saw this little articulated crystal dragon
Mm.
painted. Like I can hold it up to the camera, but she like painted it and like put on like a crystal like top coat, and it kind of like resparked my like interest of how to make those.
Hmm.
And I had gotten my husband a Elden Ring pot boy
Amazing.
Alexander. My camera's mirrored, so I got him this for a birthday gift, and I didn't realize it was 3D printed until it came in the mail, and that kind of like resparked our interest in it. And my husband really wants to do cosplay, like make all sorts of costumes and stuff, so he really wanted to do that himself. And we made the trek to a micro center, which is like an hour and a half away from us. And they were running a deal on a Creality printer, which is
Mm.
essentially the bare bones you have to troubleshoot. It's all
Was
open
that Ender
source.
3? That one?
So we got uh, Ender Pro 3 to
Oh,
start
okay.
for like $100
Sure.
and got started there. And then he found Bamboo and all of their awesome printers, and we kind of moved up from there because we were like we're tired of like troubleshooting and
Yeah.
leveling the bed every time we need to print and only printing one color and things like that. So we started out with the X1C, and then we also have a P1S from Bamboo, both with the swap, the AMS filament stuff. So, but yeah, so that's where we are right now. My husband's actually printing um, a prop from Dead Space at the moment for a friend of his.
Oh,
So he's
cool.
really into prop making, and built a Mandalorian costume, like full armor with it and everything. So he's
Wow.
taken off with it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been kind of a, I had kind of a similar, I don't remember what it was that I bought. That was when I got it. I was like, they 3D printed this, and I was like, also the quality of this is pretty good. And to be
Makes
fair,
sense.
there have been 3D printers for a long time that could make really good stuff. You just didn't normally see stuff made like that because they were way out of the reach of most people. Like we're talking, really like tens of thousands of dollars kind of 3D printers. And that's just been kind of turned on its head from my
Mhm.
perspective in the last, few years. But I don't know, maybe longer than that because I haven't really been paying that close attention. Um, it is really interesting. Like there's the Bamboo stuff, and there's plenty of other really great printers out there too. The Bamboo stuff is, I think, interesting because they've kind of productized the 3D printing a little bit better than some of the other companies have, and that's for good and bad, honestly.
Mhm.
Like it makes it kind of easy to get into. One of the cool things about all the Bamboo printers is they basically all print at the same quality. Like there's no like, oh, this one's better or faster. They all kind of print the same quality. The difference is sort of what materials they can print, and they also
Yeah.
spell that out pretty. It's pretty easy to spell that out, just or find that out by looking at their stuff. And then they do all kinds of like the troubleshooting them is really easy because they guide you through so much of it.
Mhm.
Um, the downsides is like there's criticism I think in like the 3D printing community from folks who've been doing this for a long time. One of the one of the core things that has made this stuff more accessible is the rep wrap movement, which
Hmm.
is the idea of a cheap 3D printer where you can actually assemble all the parts from off the shelf, assemble it from off the shelf parts, and the rest of it can be 3D printed itself, basically.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what got like the Prusa is the big company that kind of is built on that, and they have done. Prusa is such an interesting company because they make really excellent 3D printers, and then they're 100% open source. So the firmware, the
Hmm.
hardware, all of it. What that mean, and it's, I guess I'm not super knowledgeable on the licensing, like, but my understanding is it's a similar to like in the software world of an MIT license, where not only is it open source, but other people can build a business on it. It's not like a non-commercial license. So
Hmm.
other companies have, including Bamboo. And so a lot of their, not everything, but a lot of their like software, like the slicer, the program you use to send stuff to the printer, is built on that. And so it's kind of an interesting, I guess. I'm sort of taking a long way around of trying to wrap this back into stuff we talk about a lot at Reclaim, because it's sort of
Yeah.
similar to other, pieces of software we see, um, in good or bad. Like you see a open source piece of software and then a big company adopts it, and then some people are like, well, that's, there are two reactions. It's like, cool, that's great, that's open source at work, and then the other
Hmm.
reaction is it seems a little bit unfair, but also that's exactly what this license is for. So I don't really have a point other than to say that like there are lots of other good printers other than the Bamboo ones, and there are some folks who have been in this community a long time who are kind of critical of Bamboo because they feel like they're taking more than they're giving, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. So
exactly. Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the community too is you can go both ways with it. You can go like proprietary like Bamboo does, or you can go open source and do all the troubleshooting yourself or anything like that. Like that's
yeah,
the only downside I've found with Bamboo is that if something breaks, you have to go through them specifically to get things fixed and that
yeah.
sort of thing. But they've managed it so well that it's a slight downside
Yeah,
of that.
it's not quite to the level of like being hard to fix, because
Yeah.
they make every single part available,
Mhm.
and they're easy to buy in their store, and they've been good at keeping up stocks. So sometimes if you buy a printer from like a lower tier company, they'll be like, we have the parts available, and then they're not available 3 years after the printer's been out, which is kind of the whole point, right? It's like I don't need the parts when it's new. I need the parts later.
Mhm.
Um, so it is, it's a little bit of a tricky dynamic, but I've been really happy with it, and I do not think I would have gotten into this hobby had there not been something that could hold my hand the way the Bamboo stuff has, if that
Definitely,
makes
yeah.
sense. Um,
Yeah.
so with that, we should talk about prints. I think we should talk about some
Totally.
stuff we've been printing. We have some spooky, Halloween prints that I think we both brought. I have just a couple, and I think Meredith has a few too. And then we'll maybe talk more generally about other stuff we've been doing with 3D printing. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I can. So I don't have any spooky things. I have a lot more household items than
Okay, cool.
anything, but I will say my husband is working with a coworker of his to print out these little tiny pumpkins.
Oh my
They're
god!
so small. He's got like a whole thing of them.
Wow.
Oh wait, my camera's mirrored, so I keep like turning the wrong way. Um, so he's got a whole bag of them, and they're gonna stash them around the office, and like
Amazing.
kind of like a duck hunt, almost like a rubber duck hunt, and like see who finds the most throughout the office through the month of October. So that's just like that's the first one we've done. Um,
I might do that with
Halloween
Nat.
wise.
I like the idea. I have printed a few on-brand things for this stream, but not too many. But the first one was this little ghost that is a candy holder. It's a little bit hard to see. It's so pure white colored that my camera is like having a little trouble with it. Um, but yeah, it's not real big. Here's next to my head, but just a cute little model, and like this. Let me pull up my screen actually because um, I can kind of show the model here, but I thought I had. There we go. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
So that was just a model I got off of Maker World. And
We clicked at the same time.
yeah. And there's like a whole Halloween design contest right now.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I'm not seeing it right now, but you know what I should probably do instead is share my whole screen, because what I've been getting in the habit, I shouldn't say getting, actually started doing this right away, is I save every single design file, and I don't throw them away. I
Mm,
keep them on my home server for convenience,
yeah.
because I find that really valuable.
Yeah, while you're looking at that, the last one that they did were flower pots, like
Mm,
the Maker World contest. So I grabbed a couple of like them from the. Let me see if I can get the. I'm gonna turn my background blur off actually. The They do like rotating. I have it on my other one. Um, Contests,
yeah.
and so it depends on the time of year, but they did vases and plant pots. So I have like two sizes of these with like individual, like a drainage tray and then the pot itself. And then this one I actually have a plant in that's like all one piece. So it's kind of like turned both hobbies. Like my husband's 3D printing. I credit him more as like the 3D printer hobbyist, and mine as plants is more where I've been. But kind of turning that into a double hobby, and like I have a plant stand for like actual like ceramic pots that we printed there, and then my favorite one is this little takeout container that says like "Thank you, come again" on it, and like printed in red, and a
Amazing.
little Animal Crossing gyroid too. I need to figure out what to put in there. So just like little plant um, trends and stuff like that, or files. But it's so cool, like how you can pull the Maker Worlds um, file directly into Bamboo. So like what you've
Yes.
done here.
Yeah. So I have, and what I what I like to do is I have a folder just called 3D printing, and these are things I'd like to print.
Oh yeah.
These are just pretty much, it's not everything I've printed, because there sometimes I forget to put them in this folder,
Yeah.
or I do occasionally send prints from my phone using the Bamboo Handy app, and
Mhm.
those don't really show up here at all, because they just live in the app. But I do have I have a whole bookmark folder in the bookmarking service I use, and I also have the setting turned on my printer that saves longer term. It will save models to the printer. So here's
Oh,
a
that's
bunch of
nice.
things that I printed recently. I also did one of those articulated dragons,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and that is, let me actually. I believe this was one that I actually sent to from my phone, because
Yeah, the phone is like one of the coolest things about Bamboo. I think it's saved us so many times on like failed prints. Like
yeah.
we're out or like a piece. It's what's cool about it is you have multiple pieces on a plate if you're printing a bigger project, and if one fails, you can exclude the piece but keep the
Hmm.
project running. So like I did that. As wedding favors, my sister wanted to make keychains, custom keychains of everybody's name. So that's her fiance's name, and then I made one for her as well. And this is using the AMS mainly, but like half the time, like not half the time, but like one or two names per plate would fail for whatever reason. So I could go
Sure.
in and select the name and skip them, but then keep everything else running throughout those. So the app is like incredible for that piece.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So so looking at this this ghost here, this one took like, I mean, this is just using a very basic um white so I have my screen cranked up in size for purposes of this stream, but I've never used the app in a window this small. um, but um but this was just using that one filament, and this literally took 2 hours to print, and this is not a very long print at all. I mean, and this one has a pretty thick base on it, you can't
Mm.
really see in the camera, but it's like not light, I mean not super light anyway. But yeah, that was a really fun thing I printed recently. I think that one's going straight to my wife's classroom for cough drops. She's a choir teacher, so she is also the designated cough drop person in the
Yeah.
building. Um, but yeah, it's been so like fun. Like one of the things I didn't really understand going into this, um, and one of the things I think kept me away from 3D printing for a long time was I saw people printing models, right, and
Mhm.
finding models and printing them, and I was like, that's neat, but like if I'm just gonna print stuff other people make, like that kind of seems like against the point. But first of all, you don't have to just do that. You can design your own stuff. But um, this is a lot more fun than I thought. Like it is very surprising how useful it is from even a learning perspective to
Mhm.
just find things that people have made and try printing them. Um, Obviously you're not printing them, usually you have a secondary purpose or a primary purpose of I want to use this thing or it looks cute or whatever. But like it's been surprisingly cool to see how easy it is to for me to do some basic customizations to make things, useful to me. Like so if you download a model from here, and the program we were looking at before again is called Bamboo Studio. This is a slicer, so it takes a model and it basically creates instructions for the printer. So you start with, here's a design model that either you or someone else has made, and the slicer just comes up with what's called G code, and that's code that gets sent to the printer that tells the print head what direction to go and how much to extrude and all that stuff. Um, and I've been able to do a lot of things without like understanding too much about even 3D modeling. Like recently, I have this like modded iPod, and this is like the least relatable example of anything ever, but whatever. I have this modded iPod that I have been using, and what we've it's basically it's like a iPod video from like 2007 or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's got like a giant battery in it. It no longer uses a hard drive. It has like micro SD for storage internally. So it's got like 500 gigs of storage. It's just a crazy weird iPod. Of course, I've got all my music on there, but I've been recently using it more on road trips for my daughter. I've got a bunch of movies on there now for her, and instead
Mm.
of like doing like a tablet that's like Natalie's tablet, because she doesn't have one of her own. I have an iPad, and sometimes we use that for road trips. We're like,
Yeah.
it might be more fun for something that she can actually like hold, and it would be like her size, and like we don't have to worry about like, oh, does the iPad have enough storage, because of course I have like apps and my own things on there. So let's just let's do something weird here. We're gonna use the iPod for this, which has been its own journey. But one of the things I had to solve was her headphones, her like toddlers, well, not toddler, she's 5, but her little kids headphones are Bluetooth, and they're Bluetooth only.
Oh.
And so I was like, well, we'll just use a Bluetooth adapter. I'll plug it in. And that's been fine, but it quickly got really annoying. So I found this model of someone who made like a little backpack for the iPod. So this is the adapter. This is the Bluetooth adapter. I'm pulling that out right now. And basically this slips on the bottom of the iPod and will
Whoa.
hold a Bluetooth adapter, which is super cool because like no one is gonna make that as a product. Like
Yeah.
that is the weirdest thing ever. Plus, the adapter they made this model for isn't the one I own. It's a different one. Mine is a different dimension and everything. So one of the cool things they did is they put this model out with the actual CAD files, and so I was able to go in and just adjust the dimensions. Now, it took me a little while to figure out how to do that.
Mhm.
It wasn't you know, me saying just adjust the dimensions makes it sound like I clicked three buttons. That wasn't quite it, but it was certainly way easier than me figuring out how to make something that would perfectly fit the dimensions of this iPod. Like that is not easy to do when you have to like press fit something.
Hmm.
Um, so that was like immediately kind of an interesting, like weird use case of I wanted something that could hold this Bluetooth adapter to the back of this thing in a way that my daughter would find comfortable and easy to use. There is no product on earth that will do that. Like, what a weird. The answer, if I was to turn to a product, would be get my daughter a tablet, which I mean we could do, I suppose, but she's just not. She doesn't really need her own yet, you know. So
Yeah.
that was kind of an interesting thing and an interesting example. And I have other things like that where we've made like, um, we made a hook or a series of hooks actually that snap into like the storage. We have like a little shelf in our shower, and I wanted a place to hang like loofah sponges and stuff like that. And we made little hooks that perfectly fit in there that
Yeah.
snap in place. So
Yeah, that's super cool too. We've printed a little hanger for the laundry detergent cup so it sits directly on
yes, I did
the
one of those
nozzle.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so cool to like practical things, like fun things. Like I printed a like a I don't know how to describe it, but like Star Wars esque. This is BD1 from Jedi Fallen Order,
Yeah.
Survivor, those video games. But this was a little um, flat file. So like think about, oh, I don't know how to describe it, but like all the pieces were printed on the bed in a like attached to an outer rim, essentially. Like it's like you put it together yourself, like from the flat file to create the whole BD1. I have to find the what they're called, but um anyway, like that sort of stuff, like fun stuff like that, practical items. Like we were talking about this before the stream. Like I have a pill case that it's like Monday to Friday, two colors,
Oh, cool.
like that sort of like practical aspect of like life, like sort of thing that you can solve with the 3D printer.
Yeah, yeah. So the I have a pill case here too, and this one is actually my wife's. And the reason we 3D printed this one in particular is she takes a bunch of different vitamins. So first of all, vitamins are huge, right?
Yeah.
Um, and also she also has a medication that she has to take not right away in the morning. Basically it needs to be while she's at school, which is problematic. So she could bring like a week long pill case thing and put that in her purse, but it's kind of big, and that's what she did for a long time, to be clear. Um, but I was kind of like, it was kind of weird because I would see her have this pill case. She'd put the whole thing in her purse, and she would then have like a little Ziploc bag of the vitamins because those didn't fit in there. And I'm like, this is not. I was like, I can solve this problem that up until I've identified it wasn't really a problem, to be clear. But um, by using by printing our own. And so what I did is there's this system called Gridfinity, and it's basically a design system. And I'll pull. There's a whole website for it. And we were chatting about it a little bit before. And Meredith, I would totally recommend you look into this because it's kind of mind blowing once you start realizing the potential of it. But it's basically on it's not super complicated on the face of it. Basically, what Gridfinity is it's this little base plate, and I'm gonna put this. Actually, it'll be probably just easier for me to show this on my camera. Um, Someone designed this little base plate, and you can 3D print this, and it holds boxes that are 42 millimeters in both, width and depth, and they can be whatever height you want. And so the idea is you can design boxes that go into this base plate, and they don't have to be only 42 millimeters wide. You could make ones that span a few different boxes. And so basically he was like, I'm going to make this little thing, this standard. And he designed some demo things for it and then turned it loose to the community who could make whatever they wanted with it, basically. And it has absolutely taken off in a really interesting way. So you can find people who've made Gridfinity boxes that were, and it's grid because most of them aren't one single line like I just showed you. Most of them, the base plates are a grid. So the
Mhm.
idea is you could put this grid in like a drawer or on a desk or something, and you could make little boxes that perfectly fit your stuff, basically. Um, and it's really kind of cool. So what I was aware of that, and to be fair, I haven't done a lot with Gridfinity yet. But I am kind of interested in using it to like organize like tools down in my basement on like
Yeah.
my work area. But what I did is I made a Gridfinity pillbox. So the advantage of this whole little thing is that it is um, it basically I found some boxes someone had designed that have a little uh, hinge design. So basically, it prints in two parts: the lid prints and the box part prints. And I'm gonna see if I can show it, but the way the hinge works is there's a hole right here, and you actually take some unprinted filament and you push it through and then snip it off to trim it. And that is the hinge, basically, that allows that to work. So I printed a bunch of those. In the slicer, I put the days of the week on it because that's just a thing you can do in the slicers. You can add text to stuff. So I
Mhm.
didn't have to do any like CAD work for that. Um, and then the base plate has magnets in it, and there are magnets in the boxes. So basically, she's got this, and you can see she has the Thursday and Friday ones in her purse right now. But basically, she can fill these up. They live in our bathroom, just like a normal pillbox. And then when she wants to go to work, she just picks the one up she needs and brings it with her, which is kind of cool.
That's
And that's
awesome.
probably it's kind of simple. Like I didn't really design too much there, but I sort of found components. Right, I found the Gridfinity thing. I found this box, put text on it, and then I will say these boxes weren't super easy to print in the filament I chose. I asked Abby what color she wanted, and she's like purple, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll buy some purple filament, and I didn't really know what I was getting into yet. In
Mm.
terms, I was like, oh, I'm also gonna find. I tried this like more exotic filament. It's like a translucent PETG. It's not
Yeah.
super exotic, but what I found is translucent PETG super hard to print with with overhangs. So I had lots of them that failed, and then of course the magnets were a whole thing. Like I
Yeah.
am not good with finger dexterity, so I had a really hard time like placing them. And then of course I put half of them in backwards, which obviously is no good with magnets.
Oh no.
It was a very big learning experience, but
Yeah.
all in all, it was kind of cool. And again, sort of a thing that filled a specific need that we weren't gonna buy something like this. I mean, maybe something that exists, but yeah, it was really kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so many materials you can print with. Like the file with this takeout container came with like little chopsticks to kind of put in as like a extra decoration
Cute.
for the plants. And I was trying to find a color. We have a whole wall, like my husband's 3D printed shelves for with kits for the rolls and everything. And I was trying to figure out a color to print for the chopsticks, and I ended up printing them in wood. Like we have a wood roll from like just randomly, and it's so crazy, like how fine tuned you have to be with the settings sometimes. Like PetG wood, we did a marble. We 3D printed like our table numbers for our wedding,
Oh,
and
cool.
we did them in marble. He printed the cake topper for the wedding too, like things like that. It was super cool. So there's tons of stuff. Like the most popular one was probably like PLA, I think,
Yeah.
and then I forget the other the
There's a
yeah.
lot of different filaments. PLA is basically every printer can print in PLA. The printers we have, Meredith and I have, are pretty good with just about any material, and
Mhm.
especially the X1 Carbon can even do stuff like ABS, which I haven't printed yet, but you need an enclosed printer to be able to do that safely and successfully, basically. But
Mhm.
what I found is like PETG is a great material. It's a little bit stronger. It's a little bit less brittle and more flexible. It's not literally flexible, but it gives before it breaks.
Mhm.
But if you're doing really intricate things that were designed for PLA and trying to just print those in PETG, they don't always work properly. Sometimes they
Yeah.
do, sometimes they don't. So um, the recently, just this morning, I because I was looking at just on my phone looking at prints. And last night my daughter noticed, and this morning it finished because I sent it to the printer, like right when I clocked into work, basically. Or no, it was been before because I have a picture of her trying it. But anyway, when I woke up, I printed these, which are it's a bat and spider hairpin for my daughter, and here's a picture of her trying it out. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so that was just a really simple print. I think that literally took like 30 minutes to print. It was really
Yeah.
fast. You know, they're not really thick. Essentially, thin things print quickly because they, you know. Sorry, Meredith. I know you know all this. I'm talking for the audience here.
No, it's okay.
Thin things print, you know, from the bed of the printer up, so it's
Yeah.
really doesn't take too long to print stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, with the keychains too, like the printing one individually, these are only 4 millimeters thick.
Sure.
Took maybe like 15 minutes. So I
Wow.
would print like a bed of maybe like 12 to 15. And it took 2 hours total to print all of them. I had to print
Wow.
120, I think, for the guest count. But this one's cool because it's two colors, and so each time I put it in the slicer, I had to go in and mark the new color from the top up
Sure.
on that side. So that was really cool. I used Tinkercad and Canva to design all of them with the names and the custom font. So I downloaded from Canva the SVG file and then imported it into Tinkercad.
I was gonna say you sent me
Yeah.
that. You sent us that video. I was like, I saw a video. Oh yeah, you sent that.
Yeah. Let me find it. There's a kid, like a 12-year-old, who literally taught me how to do the whole thing, and it was so cool. I'll send the video in the chat in a little bit when I find it. But that was really fun to learn how to do, and kind of my first look at like Tinkercad. I used it just a little bit at Mary Washington, but
Sure.
What CAD program do you use for like
So,
the iPod stuff?
I've not like landed on one for the iPod thing. That was Onshape, which is a web-based CAD, kind of like Tinkercad, but it is much more. It is a full-blown what they call parametric CAD program. So Tinkercad is real simple, and Tinkercad, if I could use it for everything, I would absolutely, because I like and I understand and I get Tinkercad intrinsically. But Tinkercad is cool, and if folks haven't used it, it's basic. It's now maintained and developed by AutoCAD, which is the name in the CAD space, basically. But it is an online 3D CAD program that you basically take what are called primitives, but they're shapes, 3D shapes, and you can change the dimensions of them, and then you can add and subtract. So you can basically have like a cube that is, you know, 50 millimeters by 80 in height or whatever. And then you can take a circle of a certain, with a certain radius, and then you can put that in the cube and tell it to subtract. So now you've got a cube with like a circle bitten out of it kind of thing. And if you think about that, you can design just about anything with that method. Now, some things are more finicky than others, but you can do a lot with that line of reasoning. It's pretty easy to describe, and there's actually not like a lot of what I would call like modality. So it's basically like there's one mode. You're placing objects, and you're just setting dimensions and saying, is this a negative object or not? And then Tinkercad also has stuff like text tools. What I've found, basically the limiting factor for me with Tinkercad, and again, I've really only done a very little amount of stuff in Tinkercad, but what you run into is that Tinkercad is designed for browser use, and it was created in like 2013. So it was really made for like terrible student Chromebooks in like 2013. So it's cool, but if you have anything that's rounded or circular, it can have artifacts, and that's just built into the model, basically. So I like to use it when I can, but I've sometimes done stuff in Tinkercad and then found out it doesn't look very good when I print it. So
I found some names just had too many curves like on them, like the letters, and I couldn't get some set up correctly the way I wanted to, and like how to make small adjustments, and then it just runs slow sometimes, like with the intricate details of the names and all of that. So like that, like it's good for just starting out, like I want to start taking like a Coursera class or some sort of class on Fusion 360. That's another one that's pretty popular
Yep.
in the community. So either of those.
Yeah, and I've used Fusion 360 a little bit. I would say it's kind of the standard. Like it's
Yeah.
what people seem to use most often. And if you find a model that comes with its actual CAD files, it's probably in Fusion 360. But there are exceptions. This iPod one was an exception where someone just linked to an on-shape drawing. I'm gonna be back in like 30 seconds, I swear. I want to show a good example of the Tinkercad thing that we were talking about with models being
Oh
generated.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so sorry.
No, you're good. I'll talk about the current project. I hope the camera picks it up, but each printer that we have, this is the X1C, the X1 Carbon, that's printing a project right now that Brandon's doing for a friend, the Dead Space prop. And you can check how the print's going in the studio. You can see how far it's got. It's got about 23 minutes. This has been printing for 4 hours. So we started it when we were getting ready for work this morning, and he'll let it run throughout the day. And then we've got the P1S is the other one that we've been running, and this one just finished. I think actually that was the one I was on. This one's the P1S. This one's our newest printer of our fleet, and then the X1C is the one that just finished right as we were getting onto the stream. I was going to use this one because the camera is a little bit better. But you can see like you'll see inside like the files printed. You can see some supports down here for the file itself. But it's super cool to watch and see the progress of how things are going and just making sure everything's printing okay. It'll tell you if something's wrong. You can see on the right here the AMS,
Yeah.
I forgot what the acronym's for, but that's where we
Automatic
load
material system, I think, is what
automatic
it stands
material
for.
system. So it's a box that sits on top of the printer that you can hold 4 reels of material
I
on,
have
and
a
you can switch
picture I
between
can
them.
show here too.
Oh, perfect.
So here's my printer, and there's a few things going on here, but the printer is right here, and then I actually have like a riser on top of it that lets
Oh,
me
dope.
take the glass, because there's some materials that they recommend you vent,
Yeah.
that you so it doesn't get warm. And you can just leave the door open, but I
Mhm.
didn't want to do that. So I printed this riser. It was one of the first things I printed, and it was honestly a horrible choice to print first because it was complicated. I wasn't using the right materials. You can kind of see it's a little bit wonky. That's because I wasn't using the right materials. And it took forever. It's just a ton of material because it needs to be really strong,
Yeah.
because it's designed to hold an AMS on top. But normally you have this glass in the printer here, and then you put the AMS on top of it. Or I guess you can put them to the side too. But mine is loaded up with a white PLA, a green PLA. Actually, sorry, this white is a CRPETG. It's like a advanced PETG from Creality.
Mm,
PLA.
that's cool.
This is PLA Plus from eSun,
Mhm.
and this is a silk PLA. So I'm mostly PLA on the printer right now. But the silk makes it shiny. It also
Yeah,
makes it a
that's what
little
this
bit
is printed
hard.
on. You can see
Oh yeah,
the sheen after.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably literally the same filament, if it's a bamboo one. So
Yeah, we use the Sunlu from Amazon. They do
sure,
like pretty good sales for material, like, pretty cheap, so and good quality. So
yeah.
that's our preferred.
I use a lot of Creality stuff. It's pretty cheap. I don't know if the quality is good, to be honest with you. I haven't printed enough. It seems fine.
Yeah.
But there's a few things with the AMS. This is fascinating, like to see in person, because it will literally, for folks that don't know, it will. There's these 4 things, and you feed. So you basically just put the reel in, and you feed it through a little hole, and then the printer will grab it, and so it's be able to both pull on and feed that way, but also it will just turn the actual reels inside of it. And so the one downside to this that I've found is if you have certain types of filament reels, a common one is that they're made out of cardboard. which is
Hmm.
great, but the AMS isn't able to super reliably turn the cardboard reel. It needs to be plastic or like rubber or something like that. Probably not rubber. I'm sure it would work with rubber, but I haven't seen a rubber reel. Um, so there's a couple things you can do. You can actually you could have extra reels and you can re-spool them, which is
Time intensive.
manually would be terrible. but
Yeah.
but people do make, of course, you can 3D print them, these little machines where you can basically turn a crank to go from one reel to another. I haven't done that yet. And people even go further and make it so you can hook your drill up and go and do it really
Yeah. Yeah.
quickly. I haven't done that quite yet. It seems like kind of a project to create one of those or to put one together. What I did is this black spool here was a eSun on cardboard, and I just printed a reel. And so basically,
Oh.
you rip the side of the cardboard off one side at a time. You put a core in the middle. You screw on your new side, the one that I 3D printed, and then you rip the other cardboard side off. And you got to do it carefully so you don't like bang it and it all comes unreeled.
Yeah.
But that worked great, and I'm honestly gonna probably do the eSun stuff. Has been good. People seem to like their PLA Plus. It's really cheap,
Hmm.
and I like that it comes on cardboard. That's kind of nice, like recycling wise.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna probably end up printing a few more of these spools, like so I can have like maybe 2 or 3 at a time. The other cool thing is the bamboo stuff does come in replacements, so you can reuse the plastic spools and just buy filament that you load in basically.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I've seen people print weights, like little boxes that you
oh,
can fill with like anything to kind of help weigh it down on that
interesting.
side. We do have a question in the chat about heated or not heated beds. The bamboo in particular are heated beds. They can get up to 200 degrees Celsius, I think. Let me see what my printer's running at right now. Um,
All the modern stuff, all the modern printers are essentially heated beds because it
yeah.
helps with um and you want a heated bed because it helps the print stick to the bed.
Hmm.
In the past you used to have to use there were a couple different ways, but people would use specific types of glue, sometimes just normal glue stick.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes you still use glue sticks for some materials, but it used to be necessary. And so you basically every time you print, you would cover it with glue, and you would print on that and then wash it off. The nice thing is now, if you're printing PLA or PETG, I almost never use glue stick
Yeah.
unless it's a really, really weird design that's going to be easy to fall off the printer bed.
Yeah. Um, when I was at Mary Washington, we used painter's tape. It was a glass bed. We used
Oh,
painter's tape on the bed to help keep that down. But yeah, so the P1S that's printing currently, the bed is running, or the extruder is running at 220 degrees Celsius to help melt the plastic. And then the bed is running at 60 degrees Celsius. So it gets pretty warm as the room itself gets pretty warm as it runs. Um, on that side. So it's interesting. I always like I get so excited when a print's finished that I like want to run in there and like take it off the bed right away. But I have to tell myself, sit for a second, let it cool off just a bit before you take it off.
yeah, it's always easier because then you can
Yeah.
basically just flex the bed and it'll pop right off.
Yeah.
But
So
for
the
sure.
plate itself is flexible. So it's magnetic to the heating element of the plate. And then the lip on the side here, let me go on the other one. The lip on the side right here comes up, and then you can flex it to get the print off the bed itself. And you can do different um, plate types, like the pillbox. I don't know if I can pull it up on the camera. If that will pick it up, but we use a different plate to get like a shiny finish on it, kind of like holographic. You can kind of see it in the light there. So you can do different plate types and all that sort of stuff, which is super cool.
Yeah. So a kind of good example of that bed adhesion stuff, and I mentioned this, that purple filament I have is
Mm.
not great at it in certain circumstances. So especially if I'm printing a model that what again wasn't designed for it, so people are having it print really fast, and then so here's a time lapse. One of the cool things is the bamboo printers have a camera and it can automatically record a time lapse, which is super cool. This is such a fast print that the time lapse is only 1 second long because it does like one frame per layer, I think.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. It didn't go long before the print failed. So this is one of that purple dragon I showed earlier, and you can see right away on the first layer, the printer hasn't really done anything wrong, but some of the plastic. This is probably too small like that. But some of the plastic is peeling up just because
Mhm.
it just wasn't sticking very well. So I immediately then it's adding more to the mess, and it just
Oh
goes really
no.
wrong really quickly. And in this case, you can even see that like some of it printed okay, but some of it just became garbage over time. But then and at a certain point, now this is on me. You're supposed to, when you start a print, you're supposed to watch it for a little while. I never really do because the bamboo stuff will, it actually has, it will use the camera to determine whether a print has failed, and it does a pretty good job. Like, so it's
Mhm.
obviously it didn't figure it out immediately, but it figured out within a few layers, and then was like, hey, this has gone way wrong. And the nice thing is, you don't want something to get so messed up that it's actually gonna like it get plastic stuck to the print head itself.
Yeah.
So I'm not super worried about that, although maybe I should. But you can say the next time it went just fine in this example here. Let me open this one up. So
Yeah,
this is
we've
the next time I
had
tried it.
we call it spidering of like the material, just like creating webs and stuff like that. And even the front of the extruder head is magnetic, and if the print fails so much, like it just pops off, and then it's like then that's when the print stops. So we've had a couple of those, and that's always kind of funny. But the mobile app has actually been really fun, to help
Yeah.
identify that before it gets too bad.
I'll also mention, so one of the things that I've gotten in the habit of doing recently is when I'm at the end of a spool where it's like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to print an entire model out of this anymore. I like printing these scrapers because
Oh
they're
yeah.
you can print them out of basically any material, and I will use these to scrape up the test lines and
Uh-huh.
also sometimes the model itself. But because they're made out of plastic, they're not going to damage the bed at all.
Yeah.
Um, and I like this particular one. There's tons of scrapers. There's even the printer comes with a little metal blade that you can print a handle for. And that's nice as long as you're careful with the metal. Obviously, if you're not careful, you can the print beds have like a coating on them, so you can scratch them if you're not careful with
Yeah.
metal. But I like to just use these, and these print really quickly because they're pretty thin. And B, even if they don't finish, they're still useful because even if this is only half of a scraper, I only really need the edge, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I print these. This is a design called the Kiridashi scraper, which is, I think a Kiridashi is like a type of knife. And so yeah, you can actually see this is the original model and what the creator had to say about it. But I've printed probably like 3 of these or
Uh-huh.
4, probably 4. The thing is they're plastic, so they don't stay sharp very long. But I don't really need them to. I really just need them to work for a few months, and then I print another one. Um, it's a great way for me to use the end of a spool of plastic that I'm not gonna be able to do anything else with, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It's I was gonna say so I lost my train of thought there, but I do want to share my latest project that I've been working on this week. I saw a Reddit post about someone who just took a simple, like honestly, it was like fall rain and it was a pumpkin, and they took a simple design of that and then paused it about halfway through, and then layered a piece of fabric over it and
Oh,
then printed the
cool.
rest. So I did a Mickey Mouse head. I printed the I put the
Amazing.
fabric on upside down, so it's supposed to look like that, but the fabric on there. So I just took a simple Mickey Mouse head and then paused. It's like 4 millimeters thick too. So I paused it at like the 2 millimeter mark to like 20 layers total, and then used magnets on the plate to hold the fabric down,
Cool.
and it just prints over it. And then you cut the excess off. I need to figure out a better way to like trim because I've got some up there. My first one, I tried to burn the fabric off, but that was a bad idea because then the heat melted the PLA again.
Sure.
So I need to figure that out. But I've got like a ghost fabric I got at Joann's, and I'm gonna do like little ghost outlines and stuff for the holiday, for Halloween and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I forgot the whole reason I left was to grab one of my. It's funny, you 3D print enough stuff that you actually use that you stop thinking of them as 3D prints,
Yeah,
right? So,
exactly. Yeah.
so a couple quick things. I printed. I have a Flipper Zero, which is like a. It's like a hacking like security
Oh yeah, yeah.
research tool.
Yeah.
I printed a little like Pelican case for it, and it's got the logo and little things. So I've
That's
got
cool.
the actual thing, the charging cable, and a bunch of like the add-on boards I have in there for that. That was really cool. I found a design of someone made Packers coasters, and and I had like I happened to have that same yellow silk thing that I have in there right now. I had a white PETG and a green sparkly
Oh,
PLA. So I
cool.
printed off a ton of these, and they were just gifts. I just gave them out to people. It weren't even gifts. It was more like I handed them out to random dads at my daughter's birthday party that are friends. I was like, "Hey, I just printed 2 of these. If you want some."
Yeah.
And eventually, I printed enough that I wanted something to put them in. So this is like the most complicated thing I've designed completely by myself, and it's not complicated at all. But I've mostly taken designs and tweaked them. But
Mhm.
this is I basically so I did not, to be clear, did not design these coasters, but I measured them and made a little holder for them. So it's, as you can see, it's just a circle with a little bit of base and then a wall around it, and then a little cutout so you can put your thumb in there and pick them out really easy. Um, and that I made in Fusion 360.
Okay.
And I originally tried that in Tinkercad, and the cool thing was I was able to design it in Tinkercad in like minutes. Like honestly, it was like really quite simple, but it was pushing the limits of Tinkercad. I'm gonna pull up the print of that really quick here, but you can kind of see immediately once I pull it up what's wrong with it. So this is the one I made in Tinkercad, and if I download the video, I can show it a little bit bigger. Um, so it printed fine, but the end result has these facets like faces to it, and
Yeah.
that unfortunately is just as detailed as Tinkercad can get with circular stuff. So I redid it in Fusion 360, and I did. You can see one failed here. This is one where I made the opening too small. Then I got
Oh
it
yeah.
right, and I made 4 of them. So yeah, so that was, and I did all of that in like one day. Like in fact, like half a day, which is super
Mhm.
cool. So that was the fun thing about this is like um, how quickly you can try something out and learn has been awesome. I don't have any specific. If you want to learn more about like modeling, I would recommend either Fusion 360 or Onshape. Those seem both pretty good to use. Onshape is a free web tool. Fusion 360 is like more people are using it, and it's available free for non-commercial use. The
Mm.
only thing I don't like about Fusion 360 is it is just like a horrible program. Like it takes like 2 minutes to open. It's really buggy sometimes. It's just not, as a computer professional as we both are, I'm like, this is janky. Like this is just
Yeah.
janky. But that being said, it's not like it crashes. By buggy I mean like there'll be a weird artifact and then I'll click on something else and it's gone, right? It's fine.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's probably still the one I would recommend like learning on. The cool thing though is most of the concepts for modeling are the same. Like, so if you learn on one of them, you're going to be able to pick up the others relatively quickly,
Yeah.
because you basically, it's the idea of you make a sketch which is 2D and then you extrude it. So you make a 2D sketch and then you give it height or depth or something. And
Mhm.
then you do that over and over again. So basically my little thing is an easy example. It was a circle and I extruded it, and then I did another sketch which was the wall, and it was completely a circle in that, and I extruded that, gave it height, and then I did another sketch with the cutout and I gave it negative height to cut into it.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
that's a pretty simple example of what you can do. I mean, but obviously that makes all kinds of things like this crazy iPod backpack possible, or the dragon, like
Mhm.
um that stuff I definitely couldn't design even if you locked me in a room for a week probably. But for simple things, it's not too hard to pick up once you do have to kind of watch a tutorial for a few minutes and try it a little bit.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say
definitely.
I know it very well, but I can kind of get my way through stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Always stuff to learn with it too, and um it's always super fun.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
to
sure.
kind of find things, and I'm finding now that like we go to a store or we see something like see a video of someone like buying something or I don't know like anything like that, and we kind of look at each other and we're like, we can print that, we can make that,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, for
so
sure.
yeah,
And
so
then
it's been a good hobby, and I'm glad we picked it up again over the last year or so, and just kind of see what we can come up with it.
yeah,
Like, great.
I'm like, very excited for more vases. I've done two of
Yeah.
them, and I like this coming spring, man. There's gonna be no and potting for plants too. I made one of the self watering ones that I think it's
Oh
even the
yeah.
same design. I think you might have sent the design in Slack, because yeah, those are super cool. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're over time. I can't believe we went into this, and I was thinking like maybe this will be a short one.
No, no, a full hour.
So
Yeah.
thanks for chatting about 3D printing, and thanks everyone who watched for tuning in. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. See y'all. Happy Friday the 13th.
yes.